Today I will be trying to set a new Protoss world record and beat 4 gold players all by myself. Previously I managed to defeat 4 silvers, but 4 gold players have always been too strong for me so far. I've already attempted this challenge many times and failed, but with the lessons I've learned from those, I think I'm finally ready to succeed this insane challenge. Let's do it. Alright, so the opponents are going to be 2 gold Protoss players and 2 gold Zerg players. Now we are playing on the Boneyard, which is not a map I usually use for these 1vx challenges. I think I've used it once before, maybe in the Terran versus Gold challenge. But typically I like a little more the absolutely crazy, super aggressive, with a lot of Reaper spots, those kind of maps, so I can really mess the opponents up. But what I noticed in the past trying this 1v4 Gold challenge with Protoss is that it seems a little better to be passive and go for the macro game. Like, look at it this way, right? Like, something that I really like to do is go for 2 gate adept right from the start. Make a lot of adepts, well, either 2 or 4 just to get them out really fast with the 2 gate base, right? Get a lot of worker kills. And sometimes you might even get 20 worker kills with 2 adepts, which sounds freaking fantastic. But then if you consider we're playing against 4 people, let's say they all go for a relatively fast expand, that means my economy is still going to be 5 times as small as their combined team. So passive Protoss play was definitely my weapon of choice here. And that's why I decided to choose this map to give myself a little bit of a better chance. Now, just to clarify, you guys probably will have noticed already by now, but this is going to be a voiceover. Normally I do live commentary, but these challenges, they're just getting a little bit too difficult. And I know it sounds crazy because I have done live commentary while playing fantastic games and even winning against world champions in the past, but this challenge was getting a little bit too much for me. I even tried a 1v5 as well at some point with Terran, which I didn't succeed yet, but maybe at some point I will for another beautiful video. And you can just imagine me trying to do live commentary while playing StarCraft and defending 5 people harassing me with all kinds of BS that they can send of me. It gets pretty difficult, and I decided, you know what, I really want to try finish these challenges. I'm gonna have to try a little harder and add the commentary after. And this way I can explain you guys my thought process a little better, as you guys can see me defend against all kinds of stupid stuff. Now this map pretty much has 3 bases that I would call this for free. You might hear pro players say that as well. This base is free. What that just means is not that it's easy to take, but it's just in my territory, I guess, in my base already, right? So if I can solidify this ramp, if I can make sure they don't break that ramp over there, I will be able to take 3 bases, which is going to be really nice. I mean, back in the day of Wings of Liberty, you really only needed like 2.5 bases to get maxed. Sadly, now that's a little different in Legacy of the Void, but still, with, 3 bases, you can do a whole lot, especially if you're gonna go for Skytles. Now, I went for the 1 gate expand into the Stargate here. I think this ended up being the best build for sure for these 1v4s. 2 adepts, you're still gonna get them out pretty fast. If you guys are wondering why I was so, adamant about making 2 adepts, it's just because 2 adepts one-shot both probes and drones. Not quite SCVs, but Protoss and Zerg workers both die in one-shot of 2 adepts. So if you're going to go up against gold players as a GM player, you're going to be able to micro a little better. You could potentially actually kill 20 workers, like I mentioned before. And if you're not going to, do that from a build that is too committed, such as a 2-gate expand, then that's going to be very, very valuable. Now, I decided to go for the Protoss base here, even though they were in cross position. Notice how the Zergs are nicely together as well as the Protoss players. Just because Zergs will always have an automatic base defense with the Queen. And I thought it might be a little easier to get damage on against the Protoss players for that reason. It's also a pretty nice big base, so I'm going to be able to get in here a little bit easier. And here we go. Here the probe killing begins. I also went for Oracles at the same time. Oracles, pretty similar idea to the Adepts. I only need to make 2, and they will be able to kill workers forever. You're going to see that later in this game. You're going to wonder if you can ever finish a challenge like this without making Oracles, because these Oracles are going to be freaking god tier. They're going to be even better than you expect even after I say that. So just look at the Oracles, because they're going to be freaking fantastic. So I'm going to go for the Robo here. Notice how I'm making a lot of cannons. The hard part about playing these 1vx challenges a lot of time is that you cannot read the game properly, right? So if you play a 1v1, let's say you do as much damage with these adepts as I'm doing right now. In a 1v1, you would know your opponent's pretty much gonna have the same at you, but just less. Like, you might have a couple more units, but less workers, so you defend a little bit and you're fine. But when you're going up against 4 people, these guys probably have 8 bases at this point combined. Should have all 2 of them, maybe even more actually, not quite sure. they're just gonna have a lot of stuff everywhere. So maybe I could be killing 2 of the players, but then there's still 10 roaches in front of my base, that kind of thing, right? So I figured, since this is a good defensive map, I'm just gonna go for the cannons, go for a robo as well, so I can make extra strong defensive units such as Colossus or Disruptors, maybe even Immortals. Potentially, if my opponents go for something like, let's say, mass roaches, Immortals are going to be very good. And there is the Robo Bay. Now, the only experience I really have with playing Stargate Robo is just being tortured by it myself when I play Terran against Protoss on the ladder. Because I remember from my days as a pro that was one of my absolute least favorite things to go up against. They would have Phoenixes controlling the sky and Colossus making sure your ground units could never get near. And I always had a very hard time. So this is in some ways a little bit of a payback, you know? Like, I'm going to pay all the Protoss players back for playing freaking Stargate Robo against me all these years as a Terran player. Now, these 2 Oracles are still alive. They were in a little bit of trouble against the Queens earlier. But here you can see, to my surprise, by the way, there were no cannons yet. I know that in these challenges, a lot of times the players like to make a lot of static defense, like in particular, the Terrans like making turrets, I've noticed. Here there is no Terran. The Zergs did go for Spore Crawlers, at least in some of the bases, not all of them. But the Protoss players have, at least for what I can see, have not made cannons yet, which is going to make the Oracle harass a lot easier. Like, if you think about it, 1 cannon would basically block, I would say, about 80 to 90% of the resources. You can usually pick up the workers coming out of gas and maybe the last mineral patch, but the middle 6 patches are going to be completely invincible, which means 12 workers cannot be killed right away already. Now, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to build from the Stargate. Typically, Void Rays are seen as a pretty weak unit. This might surprise you if you're used to playing a lot of team games like 4v4 and stuff, because they're quite common, I believe. But in 1v1 games and in high-level games, Void Rays are considered to be pretty weak, and that's mostly because they really suck against spellcasters, and they kind of suck against anything that is not armored. They do a lot of bonus damage to armored, especially if you activate the ability. Or do they actually deal extra damage against armors without the ability? I'm not 100% sure. I know with the ability they're crazy against armored, but without they're probably not even that fantastic. But anyway, if you're going to go up against a lot of Queens, for example, which are not armored, the Void Rays are already not that good. And then if you go up against, I would say, goes with EMP, because Void Rays stack up a lot. That's painful. Parasitic bombs, fungals, you name it, it's all going to be extremely painful. But I did think that Void Rays would make for a fantastic Death Ball army. Like, if I could go up to, let's say, 5 Colossus and 20 Void Rays, or maybe 5 Colossus, 5 Disruptors, and 15 Void Rays, something like that, I felt like my army would be very, very good. Now, I'm trying to use my Oracles as much as possible to do damage, but it's definitely getting a bit hard on the Zerg side because of those freaking Spore Crawlers and the Queens that I mentioned before. Now, here I went for another Stargate and a Fleet Beacon. I was going to say unit, but it's more, I guess, a type of unit that I like to build in these 1vx challenges is usually the fast ones. Like, Oracles and Adepts are also a good example, right? Because with the fast ones, you're going to be able to outplay your opponents a little more, and you're going to be able to do it a little safer. Like, if I get Void Ray speed, it's going to be harder to be caught. Like, let's say there's 10 Stalkers right now. They would blink on top of my Void Rays. I know that the Stalkers weren't anywhere near here, so I felt safe doing this. But if 10 Stalkers would blink on top of my Void Rays, I would probably lose 3 or 4 Void Rays already. If I had speed, I would probably only lose 1 of them. Now, here I saw the Stalker, so I decided to dip immediately. Their Void Ray speed is going to be upgraded. These Oracles are still getting a lot of kills. At this point, I would have to guess that they maybe have like 30 kills already. Like, we killed a lot of the Zerg workers on the right side. We killed pretty much an entire mineral line from the blue Protoss, and now we killed another mineral line from the yellow Zerg, so that is looking very, very good. Now, this map does have the quote-unquote free 3 bases. It does not have an easy 4th base to take. Like, the 4th base is going to be a lot harder. This is what I meant, by the way, with the outside resources being available to kill. There was a Stalker there, which I guess basically symbolizes a cannon, and we still had about 5 workers to kill. So a little of the mineral line is blocked, but 5 workers did go down there, I believe, or maybe 4 or so, it doesn't really matter. Now, here I'm going to kill my gateway. Notice how I haven't even gone on Warp Gate, by the way. I was not planning on, making any units from the gateway at all. I just wanted to have my harassment units, and then I would go for a lot of big units. Void Ray speed already finished, which was very surprising to me. Like, I didn't realize it was going to finish that freaking fast. Now, you would think that the Zerg here has no anti-air, but corrosive biles are actually pretty scary. I'm not sure if you guys happened to watch Hero versus Serral from the recent World Championships, but there was a game where Hero was, I wouldn't say winning, but he was in an okay position, and then he lost 10 Void Rays to 1 set of corrosive bile. So Crucibles are pretty good. In my opinion, they're one of the best anti-airs. They're also pretty good against slow air units like carriers, Tempest, and in my personal ladder experience, battle cruisers as well. Now, this is the unit that I'm going to be relying on a lot. The Disruptor is going to be so freaking valuable for me because Disruptors can, yeah, I wouldn't say infinite, but they can kill a really ridiculous, disproportionate amount of units with the Disruptor Novas. And at this point, you guys have seen me do a lot of damage. You're probably thinking, oh, this looks pretty good. But if you think about it, my opponents probably have, I don't know, maybe 600 combined supply or maybe 500 or so. I'm not quite sure. They have a lot, so I still have, you know, like 400 supply to catch up on, and I will need a unit like the Disruptor for that. Like, their army composition didn't look like the absolute scariest because the Disruptors are so good against the Stalkers. Here we go. Oh my goodness, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. That was one Disruptor shot, probably killed about 20 supply of Stalkers instantly. And this is what I really like to see. Them attacking one by one is always going to make me very happy. But the Hydralisk, what I wanted to mention before, not that good against the Colossus. The rest of the army not that good against the Disruptor. So technically, if I keep making this army, we should end up being pretty good. Now, I'm not quite sure if you noticed the Oracle earlier that I was clicking away. Exactly, this one that I was clicking away from the Void Ray. This has 31 kills by itself, by the way. The other Oracle died when I was trying to revelate the Hydralisk army. I think that Oracle was on 23 kills or so. Here, another really fat Disruptor hit, probably because they were distracted by the Oracle. This Oracle now has 42 kills. I was tempted to try and actually kill that Stalker. Didn't end up looking like a good idea, so I backed off there. But that Oracle was now on 42 kills, meaning the two Oracles have now killed over 60 workers combined, which is freaking insane. Now, my army is looking very, very good. It is a bit of a problem that we're maxed now, because the fact that we're maxed means that I cannot really improve my position in the game by just sitting back. If you're not maxed out, you can always sit back and just make a bigger army. Right now, my army is, yeah, pretty much as big as it's gonna be. I could, you know, make 2 more units here. As you can see, I'm not quite sure what I queued, probably Void Race, but, you know, I was able to make my army, like, slightly stronger, but for the most part, I will have to expand to improve my situation in this game, and that's just gonna open me up to a lot more harassment. Like, this is where it always gets really, really scary. We're killing one base here, which means we're cutting down the Zerg economy by actually a very small part, because, I don't know, I guess judging by the pylon on the minimap in the top left, they probably have those bases as well. So they might even be on 10 bases at this point, and I'm still on 3. Now, I'm just gonna keep spamming cannons here. Oracle currently on 49 worker kills, and it survives that blink as well, which is crazy. And now for the first time, it looks like we might be able to grab this gold base. Also, one thing that's important I want to touch on real quick is if you kill a base like I just did on the right side of the map, you don't just kill eco, you also gain a little bit of position on the map, right? Because if the base is alive, very likely what they would do is they would posture around that map, they would have the creep there, they would feel more comfortable being around. And that base was extremely close to the place where I'm building cannons now. So you notice the moment I killed that base, I was able to take this position pretty much for free. I'm going to start a ton of cannons and batteries on the left side as well, as you realize I'm maxed by now. Now, all I can do at this point is get a better position on the map with buildings in particular. Cannons and shield batteries obviously very famous for, you know, doing just that. But back in the day, I remember some games between Neeb and Snoot, which were 2 of the most passive players in the non-Korean scene. I was going to say foreign scene, but I feel like these days it sounds a little weird somehow because the Europeans usually win all the world championships these days. But they would play some really crazy games where Neeb, a Protoss player, if you guys don't know him, he would cover the entire map in stasis wards and cannons. Like, quite literally, he would cut the entire map in half with stasis wards and cannons, and then he would just make Tempest and shoot from a distance. That's pretty much the kind of play I want to be doing here. The only problem with that is that Tempest are not going to be that good against big armies, so I'm going to play without the Tempest here. But these kind of moments are so good for me. I basically drag them on top of this ramp, but whenever they try to get on top of this ramp, Oracle on 60 worker skills, by the way, the Disruptors are just going to be so efficient against the clumped up Stalkers. Here we go, 60 kills on that Oracle. Is it going to get any more? I don't actually remember how many kills it got, but remember, the 2 Oracles combined now currently at about 85 workers, and they do fall. And tell me I was wrong about earlier hyping of the Oracle, by the way. That is about 85 kills on 2 Oracles combined. I never made any more oracles. All my harassment tools were 2 adepts and 2 oracles, and I don't quite know exactly how many kills the adepts had, but I think it's safe to say they got about 100 worker kills combined with just 4 units, and that's ideally what you want. Disruptors proving insanely valuable, by the way. There's a lot of corruptors here. The corruptors are not that scary because the Void Rays have prismatic alignment. What's actually scary here is the corrosive biles. I was really praying that they wouldn't corrosive bile properly, and they did indeed mess it up a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, if they used the corrosive biles properly there, that would have been a pretty tough fight for me because I would have lost a lot of Void Rays, probably lose the Colossus as well on the retreat from the corruptors. So I don't know. I wasn't quite sure about making that move going so far forward, but in the end it worked out for me. I think we killed maybe even up to 100 supply of army there. Like I mentioned before, we have to catch up with about 400 supply or buy about 400 supply. So every time I kill 100 supply of army, even though it might not be that big compared to what it would be in a regular 1v1 or 2v2, it is obviously a massive amount of progress. And I'm gonna try to kill this base. This move is a little risky for me as well because I am moving out of range of my cannons. There's one element that I'm missing here so far, and that is pretty much Storm. I feel like motherships are... It's a really good unit, honestly. It's an underrated unit for sure. The recall and the cloak on the mothership is really good, but I also don't feel like it adds enough value for a 1v4. Like, if you think about a 1v4, you pretty much want units that can get 400% efficiency, and I'm not quite sure units like Carriers, Tempest, and Motherships can actually do that. Like, Tempest you think would be able to, but what I imagine if I make Tempest is the opponents just have 50 Corruptors and 100 Stalkers. They can just walk through or fly through your entire cannon setup and kill the Tempest, because the Tempests are just not that strong straight up. Carriers kind of similar. Carriers are obviously fantastic when both teams are limited to 200 supply. Like, the firepower is just absolutely crazy. But if the opponents are limited to 800 supply, I don't think a unit like Carrier is going to be that good. Like, I really want to keep doing the outplay moves where I go where they're not. I shoot the disruptor balls against the grounds and I keep making cannons. I think this approach is awesome. The only thing that I'm really missing right now is going to be Storm, which I might make later. And here you're going to see some beautiful disruptor shots again, I'm sure. There you go. Activating the prismatic alignment. They tried to fight together with the Stalkers, but so many Stalkers died to the disruptor shots that my Voyagers were able to absolutely pop off here. And this was the biggest fight of the game so far. Now, I still need to be really careful, mostly because of the Zerg army, because I just ran out of prismatic alignment. Notice what I mentioned earlier about prismatic alignment being super good against armored. Without that, the Void Rays are not even that good against armored targets. So if the Corruptors would come over here now, and I'm sure despite me killing a couple earlier, they still have a lot. I'm quite experienced now in these 1v4 challenges, so I know how much they're going to have. Exactly. These Corruptors are going to be extremely painful. I'm trying to fight with my Void Rays, but there's no prismatic alignment here. Also, really good use of the corrosive biles there by the Zerg, and I'm going to be forced to recall, and that was indeed a little bit too adventurous by me. And these are the traits that I think are actually really cool in 1v4 challenges, because I'm sure from your POV, it looked like I was doing insane and I was about to just clean up the game and that's it, but they really just have that many units. Like, think about it, how many amazing fights I took, how I killed 100 workers with 2 oracles and 2 adepts, and I still need to be super careful. Now, this was a really good little segment by me. I waited for my prismatic alignment to come off cooldown. I waited for the Hydras to be zonable by the Disruptor Novas. I took a good fight against the Corruptors. I used my Disruptor shots to zone the Hydras away. And now I can battery overcharge the heal that Parasitic Bomb from the Void Rays. And we should be able to now saturate this base for the first time and put ourselves into a pretty good spot. Like, if you look at my main base on the minimap, or not even just my main base, that entire main territory, notice how that natural base is mined out. The main is pretty much mined out. And the third base is, I guess, slightly less than half a base. So at this point, even though I look kind of rich, I'm pretty much on just 2 bases, right? Now, I've saturated this base on the top, so it's going to be more like 2.5 bases. But my economy is still significantly worse than the opponents. I am not quite sure if they managed to retake that middle right base. I didn't even realize this during the game because it was so freaking hectic with all my moves and especially me babysitting my army. But I probably could have checked it at some point with just a couple Void Rays to make sure that that was not the case. Now, one thing I could have done a little earlier, like, this is always a decision that I I wouldn't say fight, but I kind of discuss over with you guys in the comments is whether I should have been getting my upgrades a little earlier or not. Sometimes upgrades are really, really, really good, but what I was mostly worried about in this game, just to justify getting my upgrades a little later, is just that I always needed enough units. Like first I needed the Void Rays to defend, then I wanted to get Disruptors to not die to a really big ground push, in particular with Stalkers or Roaches. They didn't actually make that many, they made Hydras instead, but any kind of early tier 1 / tier 2 unit push over the ground I was really scared of, so I had to make Disruptors. Then I wanted to get Void Ray speed so I could keep harassing. And yeah, we have never really been maxed super comfortably. Dude, that is so freaking pleasant to do. Just using your observer. Now I know why Protoss players like playing Protoss, guys. When you use an observer to just see a group of units that is suspiciously AFK, and you just pick one Disruptor, boom, and you just get a freaking bowling strike. You don't get all of them. That is incredibly satisfying. But anyway, I ended up being rich enough that now I could get multiple upgrades. I should have built them in a better place all this time, to be honest. I should have made a cybernetics core and a forge on the left side. I just really didn't think these Broodlords were going to be a nuisance, but without even realizing it at this moment, I realized this a little bit later, that forge actually died to just those couple Broodlords. Now, remember what I mentioned earlier about the Void Rays not being that good against certain things, in particular against spellcasters? And for that reason, I didn't want to dive on top. I didn't know if there were a bunch of Corruptors, a bunch of Vipers, anything like that. I see that the Yellow Zerg has a lot of Hydras. He had Vipers before, and that is mostly what I'm afraid of. Now notice I'm finally getting Storm. I don't even have supply to make Templars. I'm also going to go for that DT Shrine. I only just now realized that I didn't have Warp Gate as well, which was obviously a conscious decision earlier, but now I'm going to need Warp Gate for the Templars. Yeah, I was going to say Templars and DTs, but obviously they're both Templars. HTs and DTs, I will say. Now this was a really cool move that I liked. I noticed that army on the left side was very vulnerable to Void Rays. I thought it was only a couple ground units with a couple Stalkers. Here we go. Maybe we're going to be able to manage to pull that one Void Ray back so it doesn't die, and we're going to kill this entire Protoss army for free, which is absolutely awesome. And I think, judging by the fact that the Zergs have both the middle bases, and the Protoss never had one of the middle bases besides the left one, which died relatively early, the Protoss player should be out of army, especially the blue Protoss. I think the purple Protoss is going to have a little bit. The Zergs are going to have an army that might rival me in terms of supply, but probably not in terms of quality. If I can manage to not die against parasitic bombs, then we're going to be good. Now, the Zerg player was a little bit too passive there. We get some absolutely brutal disruptor shots. Every single Hydra dies. I'm trying to split my Void Rays from the parasitic bomb, and I do a decent amount of a job. Now I can go back to my base and heal up with the battery overcharge. And I think this move got us really, really, really close to closing this game out, because the yellow Zerg's army was really necessary to defend the Broodlords. Like, these Broodlords are hella annoying for sure. It's not the most important base ever, but they're definitely going to be annoying here. A couple more beautiful strikes from those Disruptors. But if the yellow Zerg is not there with the Vipers and Hydras to protect... This is even crazier. The Vipers are now on the left side. This should really be my sign to jump on the right side, but I think I was probably a little bit too scared of losing the army over there, so I decided to go all the way over there. I'm working a couple DTs now. Thinking about it, I definitely think I should have used the Avoiders to kill the Broodlords now, because without the Vipers, those are not going to be able to be protected. I guess maybe I was a little bit scared of there being a couple more units than I thought, but those Disruptors in the middle probably killed like 50 supply of Hydras earlier, so we are relatively safe. That looks like a pretty small army to me. Those Vipers could still kill all of my Void Rays, by the way, but I think I should be able to micro well enough to prevent that. I sent a couple DTs into their bases. I did have enough supply to really make a lot of DTs, but this is still going to be very, very annoying. And think about it this way, right? There is a very limited amount of bases with money on this map. I think there might be like 5, and I have 4 of them. If I manage to saturate this base, there's also going to be a little bit of gas on this left, I'm pretty sure. These Disruptors are easily going to be able to take care of the Archons. Now I have a lot of Void Rays, and I decided to just go for it. Here we go. I see there's a lot of Corruptors too. The Vipers are not here, so I decided to just go on top and use the Prismatic Alignment. In case you guys don't know, Prismatic Alignment makes your Void Rays very slow, so you don't want to activate it too early. You want to get into a really good position, but there I managed to kill all of the Corruptors again. The Vipers are probably about to arrive, but I didn't sim yet. These Disruptors are going to be able to kill these Archons very easily. One trick you can do with Disruptors, by the way, is that you can also right-click the Novas on the unit, just so you know, if you're not comfortable in controlling the Novas separately, because sometimes you can get juked, and it always feels a little bit bad, like a little bit of extra mental damage. You can also just click. Now, I used Parasitic Bombs, and to my luck and to my surprise, I I had some of my best anti-parasitic bomb splits ever, I think. Normally, I kind of struggle with that, but here I did it pretty much perfectly, which is nice. Gonna do a little bit of a recall. Also, another trick, you guys might not know that. I never really see that. I actually recalled that from the minimap. I'm not even sure if you guys knew you could do that, but you can. So I recalled a bunch of Void Rays from the minimap to make sure that I don't lose my Colossus and Disruptors and stuff to that one Void Ray. The first two opponents are going to call GG, but from my experience, they don't always sync up with the GG timing. Like, if you think about it now, there's going to be two players that have the entire army left, so I'm always going to keep paying attention to my army, because I don't want to get absolutely highlighted by some kind of legendary spellcaster combo, but it seems like that is actually going to be it. After a lot of attempts, I think I had to set up 3 or 4 meetings with the gold players. We do manage to do the 1v4 against gold players, and I increased my own record from beating 4 silvers to 4 golds. I'm not quite sure if I can handle much more than this. Let me know in the comments which challenge you want to see next, 5 silvers or 3 platinums, whatever. But that's going to be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this absolute banger challenge. If you did, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all for the next video. Adios.